We're just now starting. Yeah, I'm good. I have a lot on my arms. I can spend so many with it. But I even know they that was so nearby. And then the apocalypse. Right out, right. Just let me know when we're ready to go. You can start. Okay. Angela and Big One. And we have 6, so that's good.
Good afternoon. We will now resume the Beaufort County Board of Education work session of March 24, 2023. Next agenda topic is innovative education delivery models with focus on high schools.
Thank you, Mrs. Cushenberry. Thank you, Madam Chair. Dr. Gwads and board members, I appreciate this opportunity of coming forward with points for conversation, points for you to think in the future, points as I just shared with Colonel Geyer to my colleagues, ideas on how to spend the money. So I'm going to go forward with just a few points on this presentation. Mrs. Cushenberry, if you can go to slide 2. I'd like to start this presentation with the definition of innovation in education. Is always seeking knowledge that will support new and unique ideas and instructional techniques that will reach the students in more effective and exciting ways. If we can go to then, I want you to keep the idea with you as I just go through this brief presentation. I use that lens for the Beaufort profile of a Beaufort graduate. I know you are familiar with this already, but I'd like to take you to the next slide, which is slide 4. Here in slide 4, actually, it takes into a different perspective. That is, we're looking at developing education and what we do as a system. What I'm putting forward is the opportunity of thinking from the ground up of who are our stakeholders, completing a needs assessment of our stakeholders, which kind of gives us a goal or the what. From that, going forward and identifying the next level, which takes me to the how. And if we look at the 4 pillars, and yes, people in my division, as we worked on this, and I would have had them here, but subject to the internet, I shifted personnel at home to do their work. We have 4 pillars. First one is literacy. And when I put forward literacy, it's not just the alpha, the A, the B, the C's, but it's the literacy and technoliteracy, echoliteracy, numeracy, the process of inquiry, literacy. Your next pillar is actually HAAS, and I know it's a new acronym for some of you, but that stands for you studying of the humanities, arts, and social sciences, building that capability of our students. In other words, understanding what man has made and what else man can create. And I mean man as a collective noun, not to any specific gender. Your next pillar actually is STEM. Thank you. Where we have science, technology, engineering, and math. Commonalities in all of us, and I want to just start from the very beginning of this, thinking at science, when I said to you the science, the literacy of, what does science look like for young students? Do we develop our students to be observers, those who could then create a question and then build and do research tied to that question that also shows their proficiency at standards? And I'm just throwing those questions at you as we talk about innovation. And obviously the last pillar that I'm sharing there with you is career technical education. With that, we have student achievement. And above that, overall, our goal is to have productive citizens into our community. Wrapped around that is our continuous improvement model. Act, plan, do, check. In other words, what we do and what we develop, we just don't do it, but do we monitor, change, continually plan it, and seek to improve ourselves, or what is sometimes referred to as Kaizen. May we go to the next slide, please? So then what I started looking at for innovation was facilities perspectives. These next 3 slides are just, hey, schools in the world. High Tech USA is one. If we go to the next slide. I'm going to pause at this one because it actually reminds me of the Guggenheim. So it took me there for a few moments in time, and also another museum that used to look like this in West Palm, which was in Norton. But creating environments that engage our students to go forward and being creative. Again, innovation. Where do we land? Is it thought? Is it practice? Is it building capacity of our educators? Or is it reframing how we produce what we do as a system? If we go to the next slide. High Tech Academy, where the production of work of the young minds actually started in elementary on focusing on technology and taking that through the middle and high school. I want to share that one commonality that these 3 schools have is project-based learning. So let me drive the bus to that, back to the question of creating students who are scientists, who go out in the environment and observe, create a question of inquiry, and then go forward at creating product as a result of this, where a teacher provides a rubric to say, demonstrate your knowledge and skill. So is that only one of the areas of innovation? As I shared with you, as I started this one-person conversation, these are just thoughts. These are things for us to have an idea about. If we can go to the next slide, please. So what I'm sharing here are the most current 7 top innovations in education today. If you were able to have this as a handout or as a link to you, each one of these are hyperlinks that would take you to some research with regard to each one of these areas. It also correlates a lot of this to the 14 challenges in engineering. Now, really, what are we developing our children, our students, our young adults in order to be competitive? And I'm going to quote someone who used to sit here amongst each of you, not for tomorrow, but for 3, 5, 15 years from now. If we can go to the next slide. So, and in this presentation actually has been ripped apart by many in my division. So, and I have to say that because we create, we take it apart, we put it back together. But our goal is where we landed is building students' appetite, left out an apostrophe to apologize, appetite for the following items. Advanced personalized learning, make solar energy economical, enhance virtual reality, reverse engineering the brain. Well, what does that look like? I don't want to, God, I will not tell that to a doctor, but the impact of a stroke, a TIA. Engineering better medicines, advancing health in informatics, restore and improve urban infrastructure. We haven't, as a nation, we haven't had a roll-up of fixing our infrastructure since post-World War II. Secure cyberspace, provide access to clean water. That's within our own country. Provide energy from fusion, manage the nitrogen cycle, develop carbon sequestration, engineering tools of science discovery. And there are many other topics. These were just some that we spoke about as a group in my office. We can go to the next slide, please. So as I shared with you, it was just an opportunity to give some ideas for future discussion. As we go forward as a system together, I just wanted to put forward some ideas to you as our board members and actually our leaders here in the system. So questions, and I want you to note what I wrote next to that. Future answers.
Ingrid.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Stratus. This is a conversation that I've been kind of waiting for since I got on the board. And it's something that, we had COVID, we've had learning loss, we just haven't gotten to it. And I'm kind of bringing it forward because to me on the board, something that's very important is that we kind of set expectations of what direction we want the district to go and what we want them to prioritize within the community. And really, I've been having conversations for the last 10 years with people as my kids have gone through the education system, with parents, with administrators, with colleges, with people from all over the country about, what are you doing in your schools and what kind of job are you preparing for? And it's been really interesting. And I want to share the most recent one that I had. I've been thinking a lot about STEM and physics and computers and math and those sort of harder sciences because there's a shortage of teachers. And the prediction is that it's going to continue to get worse. It's very difficult, even with the substantial pay increases we've offered teachers to compete if you have a PhD in math. There's just a lot of jobs you can now do from anywhere in the world and make more money. So the prediction is that those very necessary skills are going to have fewer and fewer teachers. So I had this kind of on my mind, and I was up at Northwestern University visiting my son and decided to get my hair done. So I was at the Northwestern place, and the person next to me was talking, and it turns out he was a PhD in physics, who was a professor at the McCormick School of Engineering. So we got to talking about, what students, how they're coming out of high school, what he's seen as graduate level engineering programs. And it came on the topic of AP physics came up. And he said, AP physics is fine because AP physics is content based with a big exam at the end that you can get credit for. He's like, but it's not really preparing kids for engineering school. They need entrepreneurial, project based, experiential learning. And I think that especially post COVID, this idea that, schools of the future will have kids sitting seat hours and having yearly assessments to determine whether or not they progress. I think that's becoming an outmoded. And I think the pandemic really sped up that transformation. I think it was already becoming less of a, standard. And now it's really parents are questioning, what do I need to do to get my kid ready, not only to go to college or to have a career if they're going to do something in the CATE industry, but to be successful adults, right? So when I look at where public education nationwide is, I feel like the public education is a little bit slow to adapt to the changes. And that's understandable. But I do feel like Beaufort County School District has done a good job. I know we already have gotten some exemplary statuses from various organizations in terms of some of the leadership. But I do feel like Beaufort County could lead South Carolina with our resources in looking at more innovative ways to meet parents. And there's other parents on the board, so I'm interested in their feedback. But as a parent, what I see is that parents, and we saw this at the SIC meeting from what I could hear online, they want internships and apprenticeships. They want experiences. They want us to leverage technology. Maybe we have more virtual learning. Maybe we have a different model of virtual learning. We have to adapt to the fact that I think teacher shortages are here to stay, at least for the foreseeable future. And that's something that's going to take a long time to recover from. So I was at Career Day at Hilton Head High School yesterday, and I was trying to get kids excited about data science, which it went okay. But I introduced to them the concept of artificial intelligence. And I'm like, do you guys understand what that is? It's not robots. It's not Terminator. It's not, Skynet. Like, this is an actual thing that is now very active in our world. And here's how we create it. And here's what this means. And I was sharing that with them. So one of the experiments I put in, and this is where I have 3 computers going and none of them are working. I put into the ChatGPT AI a question, and I said, what skills will high school students need in the future? And they said, as technology advances and the job market evolves, high school students will need to develop a wide range of skills to succeed in the future. Some of the most important skills that high school students will need include digital literacy, how we deal with data, digital platforms, digital tools. Critical thinking, how do we apply content, since content is no longer, the content mastery is not as critical with AI and Google Mastery. How will we apply that? Collaboration, how will we work with others globally? Communication, and we see this now, I hear this from PhDs and professors in colleges all the time who say that kids are brilliant scientists, can't write a paper to save their lives, can't communicate their breakthrough findings. Problem solving. And it's not just science, that's entrepreneurial business. How are we going to solve problems? Adaptability, creativity, and emotional intelligence. And those are different than the skills that we've had historically when I was a kid. That was not the highlight. So what I was thinking about is I do think that the public school model was originated during an agrarian period of time. That's why we have summers off, right? So that we could help with the harvest, which, seems less important in 2023. Most countries in the world don't have 3 months off. A lot of our assessment models were based on SMART goals, which is actually in our results section of our coherent governance. SMART goals were invented in 1954 by a guy named Druckner. And they have kind of fallen by the wayside in the last 10 to 20 years. They're still obviously used, but businesses like Google, Amazon, apparently Anheuser-Busch, but just either disruptor or school or businesses are trying to adapt to this future environment and how our children and millennials and that group of people interact with the world. Like Rachel was just saying, we're talking about grocery stores. She's like, oh, I go to Instacart. And I think that's how my kids think about. My kids will never go to a bank, inside of a bank. My kids are unlikely to ever send a letter with a stamp. There's just been a lot of changes. So what now I was reading an article from, and I know this is a lengthy windup, but I'm bringing it to a point. I read an article from MIT Sloan about they looked at how SMART goals are not as effective anymore, right? And that in the digital world and in the technology centered world, we need FAST goals. I love how these acronyms: frequent, ambitious, specific measurables, and transparency. And that is how these other industries that are succeeding and thriving in this environment and that are not JCPenney and are not Sears, right? That they are using more of these FAST goals. So when I looked at our results section, because I was wondering why we haven't gotten to start talking about the things that kind of excite me about how are we going to teach arts education, right, in this environment? How are we going to do CATE? How are we going to do, and what CATE projects are we going to, CATE industries are we looking at? How are we going to do STEM and advanced learning with the teacher shortages? And when I look at our results section of our coherent governance manual, stand by while I wake up my iPad. It's the only thing I've got it on. Okay. It was one of the few websites I was allowed to get on this morning. What we have that our measures, we have 3 sections: academic achievement, teacher recruitment and retention, and finances. And what it says here is that, it says that to be successful, we should be effective in these 3 categories. Then what we have as measurements for these 3 categories, essentially in the academic achievement, is pretty much SC Ready, which is literacy and math for grades K through 8, and then the EOCs in biology, history, whatever. And that's it. That is the only results that we are focusing on from our coherent governance manual. And there's nothing in here about advancing art education. There's nothing in here about advancing digital literacy. There's nothing in here about how we're using technology. And so to me, when I think about, and Carlton, this is for you, when I think about what success looks like from a school district perspective, those things are essential to me. That in addition, not instead of, but in addition to improving our, competency at SC Ready and improving our scores and those things, that we're also looking at how are we educating kids in 2023? How are we providing, advanced physics to every kid in Beaufort County, whether you're in the Whale Branch cluster or in the Beaufort cluster or the Hilton Head cluster, because we're not going to have 6 advanced physics teachers on a regular basis. How are we providing CATE education? South of Broad, there's no school choice. So if you want to do something, if you're a Hilton Head student and you want to go to May River for a CATE program, can't do it. So you are absolutely bound to whatever CATE programs are offered by your high school. So that was my big windup for this tiny pitch. I would like to ask that the board direct the results committee, full disclosure, I'm chair of it, to look at expanding our results section of our coherent governance to include those skills that I think are essential for success for today's students. Then I'm done. Thank you. Oh, should I make a motion? Should I go ahead and make a motion? I'd like to move that the Board of Education, it's kind of weird because I'm the chair, but I'd like to move that the Board of Education direct the results committee to review and potentially expand the results for academic achievement.
A second.
Okay, go ahead. You actually, wait a second. Hold on for a second.
Going to be able to discuss this?
Yes, now we can. There's a motion on that. Okay, were you going to speak next? Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Stratos. Ingrid, I do agree with you with the fact that Beaufort County can lead the way, especially when it comes to STEAM education, the whole Kate umbrella. I was one of a handful of Project Lead the Way teachers when I started here in 2012, and that program has expanded. Every time I hear Project Lead the Way from K through 12, I get excited because I trained during the summer. It wasn't, well, when I walked into the classroom, it was like, here, take this manual, learn it all. And I taught design and modeling, robotics, and medical detectives. And it was all project-based learning. And I can tell you this, I know for a fact, I have 4 students that took every class that I taught that they're now in engineering schools. So it works. And I believe that we just need to continue to do project-based learning throughout the buildings because that's how kids learn. I had teachers that would come to me and say, well, how do you get them to do work for you? I said, because I'm cool. No, because what I taught was fun and they could apply math, science, reading, English to all of it. And they had to write papers. They had to stand up and present because the one thing that I've noticed working right now, because the young people don't have soft skills and those skills need to be taught. And a lot of the big industry people are saying that they need soft skills. They can't sit behind these phones and text all day or sit on social media. They need to pick up a phone and call and talk to people and know how to write letters and memos and emails with the proper capitalization and punctuation. So we definitely need more project-based learning. And more teachers that are willing to do those things. And my kids were able to do things within the community because we have projects. I had at one point 6 robotics teams. I had 3 First Lego League teams and 3 VEX teams that competed at the same time. At one point, Pat Frater was going in one direction with some teams and I was going in another direction with some teams. Pat was the principal at that time at Bluffton Middle. But that's how they applied what they learned. And that was very, very important. Thank you.
All right, Ms. Gordon. I thought you wanted to speak.
No, I'm sorry. Ms. Boatwright, I think I heard what you said. And I just want to be clear, if I vote on something that I understand what you're asking of us. So you're asking that the results committee do what, please, ma'am?
So under one of the 3 core goals that have already been identified, there's one for academic achievement, that we keep what we have and expand it to include areas like arts. And this, I'm not saying what, because it's the committee, and you're on that committee, by the way, we would be talking about would be, what other metrics and ambitions do we have for this district? What other goals, if we walk away, if what I want to do is I've got a year and 8 months left on the board, right? If I walk away from the school board after my term, what do I want to feel like I got accomplished? And so for me, I mean, one of my big, and I'm just going to, it's National Music Educators Month, so plug to them, but it's arts education. And that's not encompassed anywhere in our results, which is supposed to drive what we do through our operational expectations. So I would like to, I'm not saying I have an agenda or a plan. I have 10 years of conversations in my database, but I want to talk to other board members and say, like, what else can we do here in Beaufort County? So it's just asking the board to allow the results committee to look at that and have those conversations.
All right, next was, I think, Victor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You stole my thunder about the National Music Teachers Month, but you want to teach emotional learning? Music.
Amen.
Music is the only language that has the capacity to speak directly to the soul. And if we just focus on STEM, we're going to be a district walking around with one giant Popeye arm and then one little, we have to teach fine arts along because the capacity to teach innovation and to teach imagination, also teamwork, anything that you can do in a sport, you can teach through arts. I guarantee it. Every instrument is a solo instrument. So you want to teach public speaking, have a student come up in their class, they should be playing for their peers anyways. So I think it's right now, I'm not sure if the position exists. I haven't seen it yet in any of the breakdown structure, but the fact that we have an athletic director, but not a fine arts director is a little weird. Yeah, coordinator, but not. Yeah.
That's the role.
Yeah, the coordinator?
That's the role of what you're looking.
Gotcha. All right. I would be interested to be a little bit more, I guess, have some idea of what that is in the results part. Because you're right, I haven't seen any type of fine arts results that we're tracking. So thank you.
All right, Dr. Rodriguez?
Think, well, it's nothing like rolling a presentation into the room and then sitting back and letting it go. Anyway, that's a good thing. That's a good sound right here. So, you know, most of you know, my son is, he's really into robotics and that sort of thing. His school starts at 8:45 in the morning. He is a 14-year-old at the moment. And how many of you have teenagers that are breaking down your door early in the morning to get them to school by 7:15, so they can be engaged in robotics, in Project Lead the Way kind of content, and things like that, right? There's an excitement to go there. We have at one particular school, we have 3 teams, robotics teams, that are on their way to World Championship in Dallas at the end of April, last week of April, beginning of May. We have fine arts teams, not teams, but like music competition teams that have won championships. We've got a band at Battery Creek that is on its way to, well, it's planning its road. It's on the road next November, Thanksgiving, to the Chicago parade. Again, that's by invitation. And there's so much more to do in the work of fine arts for our kids, because it is so complementary to really fully developing individuals. And I think there is, that's the future, you know. Our robotics, one of the robotics teams, I don't know if you know this or not, but one of the things they do now is they find children between 3 and 4 years old that have disabilities, and they retrofit these little battery powered cars, and they work with a physical therapist. Full disclosure, is my wife. And it's an initiative they started. It's called Go Baby Go. And students with disabilities, they put build harnesses into these vehicles, reprogram the vehicles, so that instead of having to push a gas pedal, they can just hit a button on the steering wheel and it'll power the car. And they program a remote control, so a parent can walk behind and override the vehicle and control it and turn it and accelerate it and reverse it. It's pretty awesome, right? For children with disabilities, they've opened up a whole new world for these kids, and you should see their faces, but you should see their parents' faces, right? So those 21st century skills that businesses and the workforce are dying for are so essential that we want to make sure we're building and providing our kids with. You mentioned the fine arts. That's in the Haas component that Dr. Stratos is talking about. So we're trying to get there, and that's kind of what we're working toward and building, in essence, the point of this presentation today. So I'll stop talking because I know many of you want to talk.
All right, Colonel Geyer, then Dr. Wisniewski.
I have the tale of 2 grandsons who have grown up in the Beaufort County School District. Number 1 grandson graduated from Beaufort High 2 years ago. He's in his 2nd year in School of Engineering at Clemson. He's now taking a speech elective. He has to, kind of one of the things he has to take. He is extremely challenged in that because he's never had the training or the introduction to public speaking. And that he come to me and said, why didn't I take this in high school? because I am really having an issue with this. I said, well, Riley, you gotta work through it. You'll get through it in college. He said, I never knew how important that was. Second grandson gave his AP research oral presentation to his instructor, and she invited me to attend. He did a great job. His public speaking, he had down. He got that from his teacher, and I wish Riley would have taken that course. But then he had to also do a written. He had to write it up. And my son's a undergraduate English major. And he said, you wouldn't believe it. The grammar, the punctuation, the organization, how to write logically, quickly, wasn't there. And so he's now going through a little homeschooling to get that. So project-based, wide view. We're so focused on hard math, hard reading, and not focused on the soft skills that they're going to need. And this is not something that's been just going on lately. This has been around a long time. I've had lieutenants come to me right out of college who couldn't write, who were reading at a 4th and 5th grade level. And this is a serious problem. And I don't know how we're going to be able to structure. And your point is so right on about we are in a 16th century model in a 21st century world. And we've got to find a way to change that, or we're just going to spin our wheels. So I'm all for this. This is great. This vision that you have is right on. It's right on. Now we've got to figure out the hard work of making it happen.
Dr. Wisniewski.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to try not to make Dr. Rodriguez and Dr. Stratus's heads explode with my comment here. So we have some amazing choice offerings in Beaufort County, and I'm a product of the school system here. But the point that Ingrid hit on, and that a student who wants to take something that is within our system and already within our capabilities that they can't, that's unacceptable to me. We need to fix that. That's probably a conversation for another day, but I'm just going to make that point right now that we have amazing magnet programs, cybersecurity, we're adding to them constantly, but yet these kids, not the kids that might actually be passionate about it, can't even get to it. So we need to fix that. My other comment, just in looking at the presentation, is I'd love for us to talk about Kate virtual options. I know that that's a big bursting area of exploration with virtual reality becoming so advanced. There's ways for students to conduct Kate classes virtually or in virtual reality, whereby they can learn these skills and they don't have to go to an expensive lab or something like that. It's right there. Something else that I want to make sure I talk on, I know this was predominantly focused on the high school areas. I do worry, and I know that it's a fine line in terms of the younger age students with digital technology. That's something that I'm concerned about. And I think I've shared some different studies with you all in the past on that. I think we have to be careful about that and cognizant of how it could actually be detrimental to the learning of some children. Something that I'm just going to mention, if anybody gets a chance, an organization called Excel in Ed put out a collaborative and does it annually, I believe, piece with a company called Glass, and they look into market analysis of different types of Kate offerings and what is needed. And it's basically they're doing the work for some of our Kate directors and letting you know, okay, this is where you should be directing your kids to learn these certain certification skills. And lastly, a lot of things that someone mentioned, kids on their phones and on social media and things like that. I think one of the things that is interesting to students is that there's influencers on there. There's people that they can look at and see their different ways of life, or they can maybe they want to emulate them. One of the things that I enjoyed when I was in school was going to some of the different auditoriums and hearing from speakers. And I don't know how many of speakers we have that actually come and talk to kids these days. But if there was a way for us to make that live and in person in front of them, of people that are interesting and people that are doing cool things, not the Elon Musks of the world, because I'm sure he costs a lot to get here, but those kind of people bring the influencers to their schools. And I don't mean the ones that are out there selling bikinis. I mean the ones that are doing things that
They're
are
expanding minds.
expanding minds. Those people that, and to get to your point, Colonel Geyer, those people know how to get up in front of us on a stage and speak.
Mhm. And rally.
And then that's one of the things that when I saw those people, I thought, I want to be able to do that. How do I do that? Oh, I take the debate class, and I did in high school at Hilton Head High School. So we have a lot of great offerings here. I'd like to open it up to other kids. And I think that we have a lot of knowledge here in this room that really is exciting for the future of the county. Thank you.
Madam Chair, may
Yes.
I just, so I want to pick up on what Ms. Dene put down regarding the arts. I've seen the arts change the lives of children, and that is significant. That opportunity to be an individual as well as a team member does not happen often. Normally in sports, you're either a team player, that you're within a team, or you're an individual athlete. The arts lend you that opportunity to go into so many directions, and it's a language as well. So it takes your brain to a whole other level. To pick up on what Dr. Wisniewski shared, I do understand where you're driving the bus with regard to accessibility for all students. On the dual enrollment component, we have approved CTE courses to be picked up virtually for this coming academic school year. That's something that had not happened in the past. It is going forward with TCL. I think that's important to share. Looking at what the slide when we're talking about virtual reality and augmented realities, have been conducting research on metaverse, and yes, some controversy on et cetera, et cetera. But that opportunity for students to see it, feel it, and taste it, the cost factor goes, shh. So you're right on point where things in the brain are going. But with that as well is to take this type of technology to help it easier for our educators. That's the other part of that I think we have to look at it, including, right? How do we develop lessons that address these needs and requirements within the resources that are established? So that's something I'm just pitching out into the universe to the creators and publishers in education. That's a positive thing. We need to look at AI being utilized to help our educators. So I just thank you, Doc.
Mr. Smith?
You all have said a lot in terms of this topic. So I'm not gonna recant some of that, but what I will say is that I thank you, Dr. Stratos, because of the fact that I've been very passionate about the arts. That's one thing that I've talked about. And that's how I know, because you and I've had that conversation. And there was one point where I was knocking the bone where we were talking about creating what the Beaufort County student will look like. So this is a good thing, but also that goes with it comes when we make that and when we make what decision that we make also comes a cost, and we have to be bold enough that when we get that, to stand behind that and understand that and process that and see what does that look like. You know, it's good to be in the moment, but it's the after fact. It's just like death. When death comes, everyone is there. But then when after that person has been buried, everyone go away. So in the process of creating this and moving this forward, will we be willing and bold enough to put in action to actually make this happen? And how will we be able to give Dr. Stratos the resources to get this done once we put more on the plate to make these things happen? So that's just my food for thought that I would want to put out there to the board that it's awesome. I mean, it's no different than that school we were talking about in terms of technology. This goes right along with this hope that we've been talking about for months. So I'm definitely in line with it, but what are we willing to sacrifice to get this done, to give to her to make that happen?
You go ahead.
Yeah,
And then
Madam
I'd
Chair,
like to say something.
yeah, just want to build on that. I don't think it's just looking at the board where we have to sacrifice. There's a rich, vast amount of resources within Beaufort County that we could tap on and build that so that we wouldn't have to give up in order to do. I just want to share that, but it does take that opportunity of planning, discussion, collaboration. It's not just myself, it's a result of all of us. I have to share that and there's a vast amount of resources this county is willing to give and help grow.
So a
And
couple,
there's a vast amount. We're not just talking about, monetary resources. We're talking about talent resources like expertise, experience that exists. You can look at the clock committee as an example of a piece of work. There is a vast array of experiences in that committee and that committee.
Hello?